Hey, it's Zach, and I'm back with another episode of Elevate and Accelerate. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Laura Engel. She has been a childhood educator, an early childhood educator for a long time. She got many degrees in early childhood education and child and adolescent development. But really right now, what she is primarily focused on is being the founder and director of Little Forest Explorers, which is really just a cool way to do early childhood development and schooling where it's all outside. It's really helping kids to connect with themselves, to connect with each other, to really let them know that they matter, and teach them all sorts of stuff that we're going to cover today. And it's just a really unique and inspiring way to work with our kids. And so, Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Zach. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, look, I've got three kids, 8, 5.5, and 4. And so, this conversation and sort of talking about how we can help to raise our kids, sort of the developmental stuff that traditional school doesn't really offer them, especially in those early years and things. And so these are all a part of what you do, and we'll really dive into a lot of that. But I'm curious, and I'm sure in kind of sharing with our audience, as we always talk about here, like story is a big part of who we are, and it's our experiences combined with our expertise that really uniquely give us the power to serve our clients well. And I know that a lot of your experience now coupled with your expertise is what's brought you here. So let's talk about some of that experience that you've been through. What was it kind of like for you in those early years, and where did you grow up, and what sort of led you on the path to where you are today?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Southern California for the early part of my early childhood years. And then my dad's work moved us to Petaluma, up north of San Francisco. And that's where I went from like 7 years old, 7 or 8, until adulthood. But my childhood really did, like you said, our stories are who we are, and what I do right now and the way that I do it really came from my childhood. And my childhood was not one that is a good feel good story to break out and tell everybody, but it is my foundation. And so I grew up in a household where it really was not safe to be seen or heard, and that's really that all children want, is to be seen and heard. And I know, you being a dad of 3 young ones, they're constantly trying to get your attention, right? They're constantly
Yeah.
begging for you just to listen to them. Even if they don't want to reply, they just want to be heard. But when you grow up in a household where it's not safe to do that, where it's safer to stay quiet and to stay hidden, and you really don't have any protection from either parent against the other, then that's what you do. But what I developed was an innate sense to be able to make others feel seen and heard. And it kind of took the pressure off of me as I grew up. I realized the reason that I kind of developed this sense was to be able to make others feel seen and heard, and even my parents. And I realized that if I was able to, I shouldn't say if, because it really didn't depend on me what was going to happen to me. But there were times where I was able to make my dad, for instance, feel seen and heard, and maybe the abuse would subside, or maybe it would just go away. And so I learned that it was a very invaluable tool to use, to be able to have. And so as I grew up, not really being able to form an identity as a child, not being able to discover what was safe or who you were, it made me feel safer to be able to discover who other people were, and then to be able to find my identity through other people. Like, what resonates? That really makes sense to me. Oh, is that something I like? So I was able to use this method of helping people be seen and heard in order to mature and get perspective of who I was as I grew up and matured. And then I realized that it was a very valuable tool in every sense. Everything that I did in my life, all the jobs that I did was mostly in the service industry, a lot of serving, a lot of bartending. But every time that I would be hired at something, I would be brought up very quickly. Like if I started as a server, I would become a manager or a trainer, or some given some big responsibility. And I realized that the essence of everything I was doing was had a background in teaching. I would be
Mm.
training people. I would be teaching people about what I was doing or about the industry I was in. And then I realized that I really didn't like being around grown-ups. I was not a people person in that way, but I loved to teach. And then I realized that when I'm around children, that's my life. Like I would just light up from the inside when I was around children, and to be able to communicate with them and help them feel seen and heard, and just to see them expel their energy and their light and their happiness, to be around somebody who understood them. So I decided I really want to teach, but I want to teach children. So I went back to school. I got my degrees and I started my formal education as a teacher, and going through the traditional school system, and realizing that it just didn't suit the needs of early childhood education.
As you've been through what you went through, right, and those experiences that you had, and really the desire of wanting to be seen and heard, right, had kind of led you on this journey of realizing that you're actually really good at helping other people feel seen and heard. So I love that, and I love that story, and how now as you're saying, like, you went on to get this education, and your desire to serve people and to help people was there, and it's sort of formulating into this next phase of realizing that you wanted to do that with children, which obviously then led you into the more traditional sort of school system, right?
Mhm. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of tell me a little bit of, like, now how that traditional school system sort of shaped your understanding, and then some of the um, obstacles that you ran into, which obviously then led you into starting your own school.
Yeah. The traditional school system, I realized, is just a box. It's a one size fits all. And so children, are dropped off, and it becomes more of a daycare. It was really hard for me to get my head around the fact that I'm supposed to teach these children all the same way, that every single child has a different way of learning, a different way of expressing themselves, a different need, even a different way of listening when you're talking. And in order for you to be able to treat every child as unique as they are, you cannot apply this one size fits all that the traditional school system has set up for children. And it was around 2020 that I found myself looking for work. I was laid off from my job because um, I had gotten COVID. That's that word "gotten." I don't think that's proper English, but that's
Received from out
right
there.
from out there. COVID, January 2020. And even at this time, my doctor, I called and I was just like, I've never felt this sick. I feel like I'm dying. I can't breathe. And she's like, oh, yeah, there's a bad virus going around. Just rest it out. Make sure you isolate yourself. She didn't even label it. So my school, by the time I started feeling better, my school was really starting to shut down, and eliminate teachers and lay them off and keep their staff as
Mm.
tiny as possible, because we were losing the children and things like that, and everything was starting to shut down. So I got laid off, and I ended up teaching 30, almost 30, all through 33 of my children that I was in that classroom online.
Oh, wow.
And it was, yeah, it was, can you imagine? Um, 3 and 4 year olds online for an hour, several times a week. So that really, I mean, talk about finding your grit, talk about finding what you're made of. That really helped me to discover I can do this. I don't need
Mm.
administration telling me how to do something. I've got this. And so I started looking outside the box, like where can I do this with children that is in an atmosphere where they can be themselves, where they're not confined to this box. And I discovered forest schools which is just basically having your school 100% outdoors. And so I was able to explore some options and opportunities, and I opened up my own preschool and kindergarten, working out of Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And the children that I taught online during COVID, the outbreak of COVID, are the ones who followed me to my very first class that I opened
That's
up.
so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, so there's a lot of things that you do now that are very untraditional or non-traditional, I should say. And so obviously your school is entirely outside. You know, you do a lot of work with these kids to just help them with their EQ, right? Not just learning how to pass a state assessment, right, and to prep them for, you know, taking exams and learning their math and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're really giving them emotional life skills as well. And so kind of talk with me a little bit about, you know, some of the non or untraditional things that you're doing that are actually really beneficial for kids and something that we should be doing more and exploring as even parents.
Yeah, thank you for that. So just about everything we do at Little Forest Explorers is non-traditional, even to the point where the teachers do not get involved in the children's play. So we create a perimeter for them to explore and to have a safe place to play. But that's what we do. We step in when needed. Like if there's a disagreement or some big emotions or feelings, we'll give the children the language that they need. We'll walk them through. But then we step back and we let them have at it. So through this, the focus is not on the teachers. Every time, you know, as a dad, every time you get involved in the play, it feels good, and you know we're bonding with the children, but it becomes about us now. They want our approval. They want, you know, what do you know, they want to make ice cream for you. They want to make coffee for you,
Mm,
and then it starts to leave out their peers, and all the peers are doing the same thing for you instead of for each other. So by us eliminating ourselves from that equation, they are now doing things for each other and with each other. So they develop their own language, their self-regulation skills, their curiosity, their ability to strive to find the language to communicate with each other instead of an adult giving them the language, just helps them build their communication skills so rapidly. I've never seen it happen like this in the traditional
mm,
sense. And I was a teacher in the traditional setting for over a decade before I started the school.
wow.
So there's that. There's the open, fresh air all day, and not excluding bad weather. So we don't keep the kids in when it's raining. You know, we don't build a
Mm,
shelter and stay inside and hide from the rain. We use the shelter to change our clothes because we're going to get wet and muddy. We eat our food, you know, under the shelter, but then we're out. We're out exploring, sliding down mud hills, making mud pies, digging up worms, engineering dams and rivers, and splashing in mud puddles. So it's really the things that we are teaching. It is all focused on the developmental needs of the children this age, and what that is curiosity, and
mm,
following their curiosity and having the freedom to be able to look at things that they haven't encountered before and figure out for themselves through their critical thinking skills, how am I going to get past this, how am I going to get over this, how am I going to get around this. And instead of a teacher saying, you know, that looks too high to climb, or that stick is too big for you to be holding, we see what they do with it. And then we help them, we guide them to be safe, to learn techniques to be safe with what they're doing. So, for instance, if a child is trying to climb up a big log and they can't do it and they say, I need help, then that's our opportunity to come in and say, well, if you can't climb this by yourself, that's your body's way of telling you that it's not safe to do that yet. So let's go find something you do feel safe doing. So what we're trying to do in that aspect is teaching the children to listen to themselves, listen to their
mm,
inner voice. There's something that they need bypassed, and we don't want them to bypass that. We want them to hear that, because that is the voice that needs to be loud and strong as they are growing up. That is when they're in their adolescence. They're going through college. They're figuring out who they are when they have all the peer pressure around them building and telling them who they should be. We want them to hear that inner voice of that doesn't feel right. And then to
Mm.
know what to do, that I've got this, I can handle this. I've overcome so much already in my experience at Little Forest Explorers, that I know I can take care of myself. I don't need you to tell me what to do. So it's these kind of non-traditional things, the being able to have the big feelings and just scream their lungs out. They will sit around in a circle sometimes and just scream, and it's not like terror or bad emotion, like hard emotions. It's just so much energy wanting to get out, and they love feeling their voices, and they
Mm.
love interacting with each other. And when somebody reflects that and mirrors that off of them, it just creates this energy of freedom and expression. And so those are the kind of things that you could never see happening in a traditional setting, that these children are able to experience and learn firsthand.
That's so cool. Yeah, I know for me from my own experiences of how like I did not enjoy school. I enjoyed the social aspects of school and hanging out with my friends and getting to see them, but like it was like the sitting still or like doing this thing or that thing. Like it was like I couldn't pay attention. It wasn't really designed for me. Like, so I get that feeling. And it was for the longest time, for most of my life, like even up through high school, I just felt like, well, I don't really like school. Like I'll do just enough to get the grades that I need or whatever it is, but like school's just not for me. And then it wasn't until I really went on to get maybe not even my bachelor's, but into my master's, like where it was something that I wanted to do. I chose to do it and I enjoyed it. And it was in like this more freer of an environment that like I kind of took it on my own, that like I was like, oh, I actually really love learning. Like I enjoy learning. I don't like school, but I enjoy learning. Right. And so
Right.
um
That
no,
that
it's cool.
that brought to my mind something that you were saying, that I think that so many children who have gone through stories like mine, that school really was like the only freedom you had, the only space outside of your home that you had some
Mm,
kind of freedom. And so that's what school became to me, was just a place to not be in my dungeon, a place to not
mm,
be held hostage. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to learn because my mind was not there. I was still thinking about everything that had happened that morning, everything that was going to happen after I got home, all the things to be worried about. And there are so many children like that who are coming to school in this disassociated, dysregulated state, that it takes them practically the full day to really calm down and to have their nervous systems feel like, okay, this is a safe place where I can be me, or I can say what I need to say. But then they know that pickup is coming and that anxiety starts to come in again. So in this kind of environment, and this is a lot of what I was seeing in the traditional school system, was all these dysregulated um, emotion coming out of children.
mm,
And you can, when you've been through this kind of childhood, you can identify, you can see things that really matched what you were feeling as a kid. And so these poor children are being labeled as challenged, as ADHD, on the spectrum, and they need to just fit in, and you need to sit still now. This is your time. But that's not what they need. Every child needs something different. Every single child is coming from a unique perspective. And that's what this environment that I have tried to create gives to the children, is an ability to come into an open air environment where they can feel safe at their own pace, where
mm.
they can let go. And academics is not a focus at my school, and it shouldn't be for early childhood education. It should be the self-confidence. It should be the self-awareness. It should be the curiosity. It should be the play. It should be the self-regulation, identifying emotions, learning that every single emotion they feel is a good emotion. It's telling us something about ourselves, but it's what we do with those emotions that can be beneficial or harmful. And that's what we teach. That's what our focus is on, because academics is going to come. But if you can't regulate yourself to go into an environment and adapt to what is happening around you and who's teaching you and the children who are around you, who your peers are, you're never going to become academically articulate. Just like
Hmm.
you and me, not really learning that we love to learn, that there's
Hmm.
so much out there that we want to do because we spent our lives feeling like it wasn't an environment that was good for us. So this is what we're doing that is not typical. We are starting these kids with a foundation of who are you? What makes you feel safe? How can you feel safe in your body as yourself going through this world?
I love that, and it's so much fun to see, even in my own little microcosm. My wife is homeschooling our kids, and um, my son is probably kindergarten-ish age, and my oldest daughter is now kind of in the second, um, if you were to consider it that way. And so, like, she, you can tell, loves to read. Like, that's her thing, and like she's got the mind of an engineer, right? And so she wants to be in a book reading about wizards and whatever else, or she wants to be building stuff and connecting things together and whatever. But it's fun to see how each of their personalities are also so different, and they learn so differently too. And it's like, but in the way that my wife and I, but more my wife, has been able to create an environment for them to be able to just sort of be themselves and sort of thrive in that. Like, my son is now asking, like, can I learn this? Can I do more of what Scout's doing? Like, it's like his hunger for more is coming from this place of like having the freedom and it not being pushed on him. And so he's kind of asking for that next thing. And so it's
Exactly.
cool to even see in our own environment how what you're talking about has worked even for them. So,
Mhm.
um, well, like anything that is non-traditional, I am sure that there's pushback and misconceptions and all sorts of things that come into play here. And so I'm curious, because I'm in the same camp, and so I probably don't have a whole lot of pushback. I think everything you're doing sounds absolutely amazing, and what all our kids should be doing, especially at those early ages. But what are some of the challenges you face, or even more so, what are some of the challenges that the parents you're talking with face as their idea of what school should look like versus what you've created for
Yeah,
their kids?
that's it. That's the challenge. It's the parents,
Hmm.
because what the traditional school system here in the United States, it's not this way everywhere, but what I have been introduced to in the United States is where my focus is that parents drop off their kids, and it's more or less a daycare. You don't really get involved. You have a few conferences, things like that, to learn about what your child's doing, but that's it. You go off to work, you go do what you need to do, and then you come pick up your child. With the environment that I have created, it is necessary. It can't be done without the parents learning themselves.
Hmm.
So for the child to learn self-regulation, which is the number one skill that must be taught before the age of 5 to really create the solid foundation they need to be self-regulated adults, parents need to be self-regulated. And this is the hard part, because all of us are just that inner child
Hmm.
struggling with the things from our childhood. And so there is nothing and nobody who can trigger you like your child. And the
Hmm.
reason that this happens is because your children are mirror images of you. They are reflecting what they see. They are reflecting the energy in the household, the energy that you have. So if they hear you screaming at the TV, screaming at somebody on the phone because you're angry, talking to your spouse, talking down to them, minimalizing people's feelings, then this is what they begin to mirror. And these are all things that we don't like about ourselves, right? So we might lash out at our spouse and then later think that was awful. I am so, I feel horrible that I treated you like that. But what you need to do now is use that to go back and reflect on what triggered it. How can I now, the next time, handle that differently? How can I face that fear, whatever was coming out of me that made me lash out? How can I figure out how to calm that? And that's what we're teaching the children. So we can only do so much. Once that child goes home, they're now learning something else. You're now their teacher. And so what I strive to do, and this is in the non-traditional sense as well, is I educate my families, my parents, as much as I do my children. So every single day I send out a blog to them, and I don't describe what we did that day. Instead, I talk about the different developmental stages that their children are going through. So how might you interact with your child during a tantrum? How can you help self-regulation with your child at home? How can you self-regulate yourself to mirror that to your child? And so what I try and teach these parents, my parents, is that they are mirror images, that their children are mirroring them. So when they see something happening with their child that they don't like, the tantrums, the talk back, whatever it is, you need to look at yourself, because
Hmm.
what you're seeing is what you're reflecting. So what part
Mic
do you
drop.
have in it, right? My job does not stop at school. My job continues into the home. And so I have to be the kind of regulator, the kind of center that not only children can trust and feel safe with, but that parents also feel that they can come to me and get advice or feel safe being able to reveal something that is so intimate in themselves that they haven't really turned around and looked at yet, to be able to try and heal that, to be able to teach their children how to heal that or to not reflect that. So that is one of the biggest challenges that I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, I don't know that I would know how to have it with you. Like, it's been my own personal journey of understanding my own way of self-regulation. And to your point, it's like I can see now, sort of coming on to the other side of understanding how to do that even a little bit better. How my kids do mirror that, right? In the ways that they even interact with each other.
Mhm.
But I was just talking with my men's group that I'm a part of. This was probably a couple of weeks ago now, but it's like with my two daughters, I have very little of that, because they don't reflect back to me what it was like for me as a child, or what I thought, like, but then, like, with my son, my middle child, it's like I feel that same level. Like, my inner child is like, well, wait a minute, that was crushed in me, I need to crush it in you. Like, it's like I'm recognizing, and it may just be like, don't run around the house, don't yell, don't do this thing. It was all the things that were like kept me from playing, because the house was supposed to be orderly and quiet,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like I feel almost like my control as a kid was taken, and so now I'm almost taking back some of that control, but putting it onto my son, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like those moments of like, if I wasn't aware, and if I didn't have people in my life helping me be aware, because of my blind spots of like how I was doing that, I would just be creating the same
Yep.
cycle, and my son would grow up in the same environment, and so on and so
That's
forth. And
it.
that's crazy.
That's it. That's it.
Because we want to be better. Like, we want to be better than our parents were. And even if they were great, it's like we
Yeah,
want to treat our kids better than we did. And this is such a
absolutely.
great environment to be able to do that. So, well, here's a question for you then, that's more practical, because you mentioned it, right?
Mhm.
You have to teach parents how to teach self-regulation to their kids, and if before the age of 5, I mean, I didn't know that, but if you're not teaching this and getting to them before the age of 5, it's going to be a lot harder for them to learn it as they get older, right?
Mhm.
So how do you start teaching a kid self-regulation? And I imagine part of that answer is it needs to start with you too. And so how do I start if I don't even know how to do it for myself?
You model it, and you're exactly right. That's the answer. You model it. For children under the age of 5, they don't have the ability. Their brain has not developed yet to the point where they can calm themselves. So it has to be modeled. They have to be walked through it. So in order to do that, whoever is their caregiver at the time, must model it. So I'll just give something we've all encountered. if you have taken care of a child, you've encountered this. Let's say it's a cold, windy day outside, and you've asked your 3-year-old to go put on a jacket, or you have handed their jacket, put on your jacket before we go outside, and it just goes into a full-blown meltdown. And you're thinking, this is the most ridiculous thing to melt down about. Put on your jacket and let's go. But what your child is experiencing is a full fight or flight. Their circuitry, for some reason, that request to put on the jacket just sent their whole brain into meltdown. And so it's no longer whether this looks trivial or not to you, it is a survival mechanism, and your child is in fear. So what you need to do is remember that. You need to remember that there is no connection happening with their brain right now on reasoning. So don't even try. So the first thing that you need to do is model. So first thing I do is I get down on their level. So I am no longer a threat to them. I'm not opposing over them, hanging over them, but now I am eye to eye, and I give them enough space. I don't get right up next to them because I don't assume they need a hug. I don't assume they need comfort. I take a little bit of space so that they feel like I'm not encroaching on them. And then I just start breathing. I'll take really deep breaths in and really loud breaths out. And this is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to calm me down, because I want to get that kid in the car. I'm running late, we got other things to do, and this is ridiculous. So now I'm calming myself down, but what they are seeing is I'm not threatening them. So that gives their nervous system an automatic, I'm okay. I'm not going to be harmed. I am safe. And now it's distracting them because now they're hearing you breathe. You're not talking. You're not yelling at them like they expected. And so they're going to start mirroring what you're doing. So as soon as you feel that connection has been made, like you can see a physical change in them, then you can start identifying their feelings. And this is where you label. You give it a label. You looked really mad when I asked you to put on your jacket. You looked really frustrated to be stopping what you were doing. And put that label on them so that they don't feel that responsibility to have to name it themselves, but instead they can identify with it. Yes. They may not say anything, but you'll see the calm happening, because once you put a name on it, that monster is no longer, it's visible. You can attack it. It's no longer hidden. It's no longer scary. So now, okay, you were frustrated. All right. I understand that. And then what I do is I apply it to myself. Sometimes I get really frustrated, and then that's where I connect with the child. When I feel frustrated, do you want to know what I do? Can you help me calm myself down? Because I feel like I need to be calm. Can you breathe with me? Then we breathe together a couple times. And then after that, then you can start tackling by asking them. Really, it comes down to two choices. You want to take everything off their plate. Give them no more, no less than two choices. And each choice comes up with the outcome you want. So I would say something like, once they have calmed down and we've talked things out, then I say, so we need to go. But here's two choices I'm going to give you. You can we can either pack up that jacket and put it in the car. So if you get cold later, you can wear it. Or we can go upstairs or to your bedroom and find a jacket you would rather wear. So either way, you're getting the outcome you want, but they feel like they've got the autonomy to make that choice. You've given them the power. And there's going to be times, like 98% of the time it's going to work, but you're going to have those times where they're like, neither one works for them. And they're, you're covering my Elsa dress. It's not purple enough. So-and-so is going to be wearing something else, and it's like, just what do I do now? So stick with your two. Stick with your two and just say, I hear what you're saying, but those weren't the two choices. Give them the two choices again. If they still don't choose, then you say, okay, well, then I'm going to have to make the choice for you if you can't make one yourself. And 99% of the time, they're going to take a choice because they don't want you taking that away from them. And if not, then okay, we're not making you put on the jacket. I'm taking it in the car. You can freeze, you can get wet. You can, whatever's going to happen between here and the car, but you'll have that jacket. No harm is coming to them from choosing another way of going about that. But what you've done is you've shown them how to self regulate. So once they're self regulated, maybe later that night after you pick them up from school, or you're giving them their bath, or you're reading a book to them, come back to that moment. Come back when they're self regulated and say, that really scared me when you did that. Or I felt really sad for you when you were feeling that sad. What can we do next time together when you're feeling like that? What would make you feel better? And come up with a plan so that next time that happens, you start your regulation and then incorporate their plan so that it's physically noticeable to them, and then they feel seen and heard because you are now doing what they have asked you to do, and
Mm.
you're making it a part of your routine, showing how important how they feel is to you.
That's um, that's really helpful, and I love that idea of the whole walkthrough, right? Because there's a lot of things that we can do there, and I know like I've tried pieces of that, but it would be great to kind of implement all of that together with them, and then I'm sure like anything else, right? It's consistency, right?
Right.
If you've got a like I do a 4-year old right now, and I'm going to try to implement that with her right now, it's going to take a whole lot more times before she starts to figure out that like this is the way that we do things now.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be that consistency that helps her,
Yeah. but
which obviously you do for your kids.
but with that 4-year old, since you have that history, you can, in those downtimes, you can come up with a plan. You
Mm.
already know what the pattern is. You already know what kind of things set them off. You know them better than anybody. So that's a nice time to be able to say, I was just thinking about the other day something that happened, and I wasn't quite sure what you needed from me. What would you like to see from me when something like that happens? And then you're acknowledging their feelings, and you're letting them know that you're on their mind more than when they're just in front of you. You're showing them how important it is to make that connection with them, and that you've really been thinking about them, and that what they are feeling matters. And that's going to build that foundation in them to hear that in their head. If what I'm feeling means so much to dad or mom, it must be important. What I feel must be important. And that's what we want them to feel. We want that foundation of them listening to themselves and acknowledging that what they feel about themselves matters more than what others feel about them, especially
Mm.
as they grow up through their adolescent years.
All right, so we're kind of winding into the end of this. Actually, let me timestamp this so Matt knows. Let's say at 37 minutes. Bad internet. All right. Yeah. So, Laura, I mean, this has been great. I think our future are our kids, and whether it's our kids or somebody else's kids, or if even we don't have any kids, um, self-regulation is such an important part of the conversation, and I love that it's becoming more and more a part of the conversation. But the fact that you are taking that responsibility so seriously and dealing with young early kids before they're getting to school, teaching them the skills that they need so that if and when they do go to school, they have the tools already in place to have the best experience, to get what they need, to be able to verbalize what they need, right? I mean, all the things that I know in my own experience was just non-existent. I didn't even know what to ask for or what was going on. And as you mentioned earlier, like, and it made me think, and hurts my heart to think about too, like just how many kids, like if I were to stick a number on it, like I wouldn't even know, like millions of kids who are going to school dysregulated, and like that's the break that they're getting, and that anxiety of feeling of having to go back and just whatever, like um gosh, whatever we can all do to help change that, is what's more important, than impacting the lives of kids. I mean, that's what it's all about. So thank you, for everything that you're doing, and with the Little Forest Explorers, and this advocating for what really matters most in cultivating self-regulation, adaptability, and a lot of these things that matter. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I think we've hit it. I think we've kind of nailed the answer to this question already, but I'll ask it just the same, if anything, then by way of summary. But what are some of the most valuable insights or takeaways that you would leave with our audience today? Just sort of recapping what we've talked about today.
I would say the most valuable takeaway that I would want people to leave with is that what we do matters. And how we shine our light, how we reflect ourselves to others is what is going to be reflected back into the universe, back out into society. And if we can work on ourselves, I mean, it's too late for us to start at the core. But if we can help those children who have this capability to learn this from the core, just imagine, Zach, a generation of children who are able to self-regulate by the age of 5, who have learned to do this in their everyday. It's like breathing to them, how to self-regulate. Now imagine what that translates into a generation of adults who now thrive in decision making, in handling stress, in mirroring to other people, in making others feel seen and heard, in not holding in all of this pain of the inner child that we've grown up with because they were able to express that as children. Imagine what a generation of adults would look like. So what we do right now matters. What we do right now with what the knowledge that we have matters. And it's dependent on us. It doesn't have to just start with the generation, of the young ones that we're teaching, because it must start with us. We have to be the ones to teach it. And in order for us to teach it, we have to know it. We have to practice it. We have to show it. Otherwise, what we're saying really doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that we don't have to wait. We can start right now, and reflect it. Reflect the love, reflect the power, reflect the independence, the curiosity, bring out everything that inner child didn't get to express, and show people around us that it's okay, it's safe. It's okay to be that person. It's okay to have that inner child and to nurture it.
I love that. And in kind of tying this together and back to everything that we talk about here, whether it's branding or storytelling or your story, it all comes back to, if you want to show up in the world, whether that's to your clients or to children or to your friends and family members, if you want to show up with your light, if you want to have a joyful impact in the world, if you want to show up authentically, you need to take the time to reflect on your own story, to look at the parts where you're not paying attention to, the parts where you've been running from, or whatever it might be, and realizing that what you see or may see as weakness is probably where your greatest strength lies. And then in healing and sharing that, we all get stronger together, right? And so,
You could
as
just
you
mic drop
said,
right now. Yep. Nailed it.
yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And I love that vision that you just cast, to have that for our kids and for each other and for everybody. It's like, let's shine our lights in a more powerful and impactful way. And it all starts by fanning our own flames, right? And understanding what's going on inside of us. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for what you're doing with kids. If somebody wants to get in contact with you or find out more, what would be the best way to do that?
The best way is to go through my website, littleforestexplorers.com. My contact information is in there, and email, text, call. Yeah, it's all right
Awesome.
there.
Well, thank you, Laura. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much, Zach. This was so fun.
Yeah, good. Well, and thank all of you for joining us and paying attention and checking it out. So, as always, if you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with parents, friends, family members, anybody that you think would be able to benefit from this and hear of other ways in which we can help empower our children and ourselves to regulate and work together and shine our lights. And so, until next time, keep elevating and accelerating. Cheers.